And now I'm going to share. All right. Well, welcome everybody to I think it's our third Zoom for the year. It's nice to see, like Stephanie said, a very diverse set of people coming out, or members coming to the Zoom meeting. So it's great to see most of you, especially some of the international and interstate people. Just a few housekeeping before we start. Please mute your audio during the meeting. We don't want to have any distractions from other people talking and interference. If you've got any questions, put them in the chat and I will read them at the end of the presentations, or I might even get some of the people to read their questions. As you know, the meeting is going to be recorded and it will be put on the on our website later on. Not working. Okay, working. That's better. Okay, as everyone knows, we've got Jonas Hallstrom with us presenting tonight. Jonas is presenting his Australia 1963 to 1974 Navigators, the definitive issues. As I said in my emails, you'll be seeing some very unique items in Jonas's display. And it's an excellent display. I think I saw part of it at the Rpsv Zoom meeting, so I think you will all be very much enjoy the display. Now, I just got to admit a few more people. Latecomers are coming. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
All right. All right. That's good. Now, I'll introduce a few things in regards to Jonas. Jonas is an RDP, and he was invited to sign the role of Distinguished Philatist in 2016. He's a fellow of the Royal Philatelic Society of London. At the moment, he's the managing director of a Cornfield auction house. He also served in the Swedish Army, and he advanced to Lieutenant Colonel. In 2021, he got a FIPA medal for outstanding service to philately. He's been involved in organised philately and in philately since 2009. He's a current FIP thematics judge, has published various articles on thematic exhibiting. He's got various exhibits, and a few that he's retired. He's had a large gold exhibit in thematics on sailing ships, which achieved large gold in FIP in 2009. And the large gold in FIP, at Australia 2013. I don't think there's very much more I can say. Anyway, over to you, Jonas, and everyone. I would like everybody to welcome Jonas. Thank you, Jonas. I'll stop sharing, then you can share your screen.
Okay, thank you for that. I will share my screen. Can you see my screen?
No, we can't.
Okay.
I can see it.
Can you? Can anybody else see it?
No.
No.
Can't now.
Do you see the PowerPoint now?
No, hang on, let me have a look, see if I've. No, hang on. All right, where are we?
Frank, we just see the people, we can't see the screen.
Yeah, no,
okay?
that's all, yeah.
And if you can see it, you've got it set not to be visible to everybody.
No, who can share screen? No, it says all participants. I just looked at that.
So I try. Can you see it now?
No, I'll tell you when we can.
Yeah, no, hang on, I'll just go into the settings, see if it's who can share or who can start sharing when someone else is.
There it is.
There it is.
There it is. Got it.
It proved to be something here in my computer, but let's now start. You can see my screen.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me to do this presentation. I have been looking forward to that. As you said in your introduction to me, I have different backgrounds in philately. For those of you who knows me, you have probably seen my sailing ship collection. I exhibited in Melbourne 2013. But I like to collect, so I have unfortunately been forced to retire some exhibits to start new ones. So currently, I am very active working with 3 different collections, as you should be able to see on my screen now. In thematic philately, I am currently developing a thematic exhibit about warfare, which is, of course, connected with my professional background. I was in the Swedish military for 19 years until I retired in 2011. And in postal history, I am currently working on a all-world exhibit in postal history about phonopost, voicemail. UPU, they started a new type of mail service in the 1930s. Where it was allowed to send voice recordings in the beginning by vinyl recordings, and in the 1960s, 1970s, also with cassette recordings. This is not shown yet, but I have accumulated material enough to do an 8-frame exhibit about that in due course. And tonight I will present for you my latest exhibit ready to be launched for competition. In traditional philately, I have developed a collection about your fine navigators, the high values from 1963 to 1974. And if you are coming to Perth in November, I will be there with 7 frames with these navigators. So this is the pre-launch to what I will show you on site in Perth in November. And if you have any comments after today's presentation or any feedback which you not really want to discuss tonight, you can email me, because of course I want my exhibit to be correct and in the best shape when I come with it in person in November to Perth. So starting with the navigators, I assume that most of you know quite much about them, but I will anyway introduce them to all of you so we know where we are. 6 navigators are depicted on 6 stamps. The first one, the 4-shilling stamp with Abel Tasman, the Dutch navigator who discovered Tasmania and who was sailing with his galleon, a typical ship of the time in the 17th century. The second 10 shilling denomination is with Matthew Flinders, who undertook considerable exploration and charting of the southern and eastern coastlines. And in 1803, he became the first navigator to circumnavigate the Australian continent. The £1 denomination is with George Bass, who was a companion to Flinders in various explorations of the eastern coastline in Tasmania. And in doing so, he also demonstrated the existence of the Bass Strait. James Cook is possibly the most well-known navigators, at least internationally. And he is depicted on the 7 shilling 6 denomination. And he was, as we all know, an English naval officer who first discovered and charted the eastern coast of Australia in 1770. The highest denomination is the £2 with Philip Parker King, who was a naval officer who conducted lengthy surveys of many parts of the Australian coast in the ship Mermaid between 1817 and 1825. And the 5 shilling denomination with William Dampier, who was an English explorer who first visited the northern Australia in 1688. And the stamp also depicts his ship Roebuck. So these are the 6 phases with the 6 navigators. The famous stamps which was issued from 1963 until 1966 were in use, 1963 to 1966, and they were issued at 4 different times. The 4 shilling issue with the Tasman was issued in October 1963. And the 6 stamp to the right here on the screen, the 5 shilling denomination with William Dampier, it was issued in November 1964. And this series made me interested 15 years ago, when I realized that the same phases, the same design were used twice during the conversion from the pound to the dollar. So traditionally, I found it interesting to develop a collection about it. And what I also have found out along the way is, of course, the uses of them, because the uses are very rare sometimes, particularly solo frankings, and of course the most exceptional mixed frankings, which all were used to multi-rate combinations for not least the high airmail fees from Australia to the rest of the world. So these 2 aspects in philately, the traditional aspect and of course the uses, the postal history aspects, they made me to develop this traditional philately study on the navigator issues. And as I said, I will launch it now in Perth in conjunction with the exhibition you do there. Okay, I am quite confident that all of you know very well how the Australian pound were divided into shillings and pence. But anyway, this is a reminder on that too. The pound was, as we know, not a decimal currency. So £1 is divided into the 20 shillings and the 250 pounds to the 240 pence to the pound.
Yep.
And I will come back to this, of course, during my treatment as well. And when you want to read the rates I will present for my frankings, a mixed sum of shillings and pence is in the exhibit, of course, written up as 7 shillings / 6 pence, or a flat rate of 4 shillings is written 4/-. So this is how to understand the rates later on. When these stamps were released and presented publicly, they were presented on these publicity cards, which were prepared by the Australian Post Office to illustrate new stamp issues. And these presentation sheets, they were sent to overseas trade missions and Australian embassies and placed on public display. And when these presentation sheets not were presented anymore, many of them were thrown away. So I have learned from the sources you have on these issues that they are quite rare to find, and it is uncertain how many were made from the beginning. I have seen a figure of 50, and less has of course survived. So they are very rare to find, and the set I have in my collection I bought from the Arthur Gray sale at Spink in 2017. And when the stamps were presented and they were of course made also proofs, and these presentation die proofs, they were in Australia produced until 1964 in 10 copies, which were decreased in number during this period. So the first proofs, they exist in a set in 10, and the last proof exists in only 8, which I will come back to later. And these proofs, they were presented to the Queen and to officials of the administration in Australia and to the Stamp Advisory Committee members. So this is how the 10 were used. Unfortunately, the glue which was used for the matting has caused staining over time. So the proofs I have in my exhibit, you have them here. You can see some marks from the stains. So this is why these proofs, long time ago, before I had them in my collection, it was again bought by me from Arthur Gray in the sale 2017. Sorry, it was bought at Millennium sale after Arthur Gray. This matting was taken away, so the proofs I have are clean like I have them here. And again, of the 4 shilling, 10 were made. Of the 10 shilling, 1 pound, 7 shilling and 6 pence, and the 2 pound, 9 were produced. And of the 5 shilling, 8 proofs were produced. So they are, of course, the beginning of each denomination. To have these proofs is essential to introduce the design and, of course, the stamp itself and the denomination. What I luckily have found to my collection, in addition to the official presentation proofs, is this pair of the 7 shilling 6 pence James Cook die proof. So this is something other than the 9 official ones. This is possibly an unofficial proof, which I have in my collection. And the stains are probably from the tape when attaching this proof on a presentation card. And I assume that it has been used for some internal presentation in the Australian post office, possibly. But this is, of course, a very important piece I have, which I am very proud, of course, to have been acquired. Regarding the manufacturing and use of these stamps, as I already said in the beginning, they were made in 2 denominations. First, the pre-decimals and later the decimals. And this makes, of course, it interesting to study the process, how they were made, and of course, how they were processed along the time. The stamps, they were printed by the Commonwealth stamp printer in Melbourne, and they were intended to be used in multi-rate combinations, which again implies that commercial solo frankings are rare to find. So I have tried to focus on actually acquiring solo frankings, as that is something important for a traditional study, because that's also increased the rarity of the collection itself. As a reference to understand the denomination value of each denomination, I have made here, as you can see, a comparison between the normal domestic letter rate by the time, which was 5 pence. And as you can see here, the highest value, the £2, reflects 96 times the basic rate. For you living in Australia, this is of course maybe not so impressive to understand, but when I present this to other people around the world who doesn't understand how these high values actually were used, to understand that the £2 reflects 96 times the domestic letter rate, it gives some other perspective. And the £2 is, of course, the most critical one to find used. I have made statements here in my collection that the one I will present for you later here tonight is a commercial use. I know there exists another one which I will come back to later, which is used a little bit different than the one I have, but also cutouts, I have learned, are difficult to find with the £2 value. So I have a few cutouts also presented on a page in my collection, just to demonstrate the importance of the £2 in regard of rarity and to find it. So coming back to the solo uses, the solo franking I have here is the solo franking of the 4 shilling from Arthur Gray's collection. And this solo use is used on an airmail letter to North America, which was paid 2 shilling per half ounce, effective from the 14th of July, 1958. A nice solo franking in use. Another solo use is the 7 shilling 6 pence with the James Cook, used on the first day. I don't know, possibly this is semi-philatelic made or so, I don't know, but the rate is correct for a second airmail letter rate to Sweden, which was 2 shilling 3 pence per half ounce. And the registration fee, including compensation, was 3 shilling. So anyway, semi-philatelic or not, from the first day, I like this solo use to Sweden. Another solo use, which is very rare, the £1 in use is very difficult to find, and this is a parcel label, parcel tag, used on a parcel to England, and the £1 solo rate coincide with a weight of the parcel between 7 and 11 pounds here, 1964 to England. And the sources I have fortunately been shared from Australian collectors says that on the £1, less than 10 uses exist. Maybe I have some recent examples myself now which possibly push the 10 figure a little bit higher. Maybe I would need to say 10 is now possibly 13, 14, but not very many more. The £1 is very rare to find. And mixed frankings. This is a mixed franking of 9 shilling, a combination with 5, 1 shilling 6, and twice 3 pence stamps. And this is on a second weight step airmail letter rate with registration September 1965 to USA. So this is a nice combination franking. And all these frankings with the pre-decimal stamps are, I have found out, they are not easy to find. This is another mixed franking with a 10 and 4 shilling together, 14 shilling. And 14 shilling is the 6th weight step airmail letter rate with registration to the United States of America again. Another very extraordinary combination mixed franking is, of course, again the £1, and not least you can see here also the combination between the £1 Navigator and the £2 5 times of the coat of arms, the high values preceding the Navigators. So that also makes this very exciting. This is a franking of totally £11, 19 shilling and 6 pence, and this is paying for 286 articles which has been mailed by Kodak, the photo company, over a week's time from the 17th of March 1964 to 25th of March 1964. So they have accumulated debt on postage, which they have paid to the Postmaster General's department in bulk, £11, 19 shilling and 6 pence. And again, it is a combination with a nice franking of different high values, not only the Navigators, but also the coat of arms issue. And this is an item I acquired from Jamie Goff in United States, and I will come back to Jamie's role for me to start this collection later in the presentation. Mixed franking again. I have the James Cook denomination 7 shilling 6 pence together with twice 3 pence QE2. And this is a use on a third weight step airmail letter rate with registration on the 4th of November 1965 to United States of America, paying 8 shilling in total. And I have learned that finding this 7 shilling 6 pence James Cook is not easy either. The sources I have been fortunate to access, I said, again, less than 10 are recorded of the 7 shilling 6 pence. Another example of the same stamp in use is, of course, this one, paying the third airmail printed matter rate to United States of America. This time it is used on a Sydney Stock Exchange postal stationery wrapper, applicable for 5 pence, and altogether 8 shilling 3 pence. Correct rate, including taking into the account the postal stationery wrapper. And this is, of course, an exceptional use, which also once upon the time was in the Arthur Gray collection. So you can see that even though these stamps are rare to find in use, I have been fortunate to buy a few of them. And here, of course, the only recorded commercial £2 use. Well, okay, maybe I should be more humble and recognize also the second one I will show you later. But I think this one is extraordinary because, as you can see here, this is a business reply use. And business reply was something you can read here, that business reply post was allowed by businesses to pay the postage on replies received through printed addressed envelopes and cards and provided by the business for use by its customer. So the receivers, they could return the mail unfranked, and the receiver, they had to pay it in bulk. And this is a business reply mail paying for 301 domestic letter rate items in March 1965. And you can see that it is the returning officer of the Gloucester Soldiers Club who is the addressee. And the combination here with the 2 times £2, the 1 time £1 again, together with the £2 coat of arms and the 10 shilling flinders and the 6 pence stamp with the bird here. It is an extraordinary mixed franking. And I have dared to state here that this must be one of the most important items in modern Australian philately. You might challenge me on that later, but to my mind, this is the item I am most proud of course, in my collection. And I will give you a context on this use from 1965 a little bit later in the presentation. So far, I have been focusing on talking about the the uses, but of course the study of the stamps is important as well, and I will come back to that. But first I want to address the transition of the currencies. The Australian government, they announced already in 1963 that the name of the new decimal currency will be the dollar, but it took 3 years until it came effective. And when it came into effect in February 1966, the conversion rate was set to make it easy to convert the rate into new denominations. So the conversion factor 1.2 or 1.2 pence was equivalent with 1 cent. So on the first row here, you can see how the decimals were converted into the decimal values. So 4 shilling became 40 cent. 10 shilling became $1. 1 pound became $2. 7 shilling and 6 pence from the cook became 75 cent. The 2 pound became $4, and the 5 shilling became 50 cent. So that made it easier for the public to understand the equivalence. I don't know, I was not born at the time, if it was easy or not to follow. The only combined mixed franking between pre-decimal and decimal frankings I have found, and this is something which I have been surprised on. I don't know the relative scarceness of finding mixed frankings between pre-decimals and decimals, but this is the only one I have. This should explain that it was allowed from the date in 1966 another 2 years until 14th of February 1968 to use the pre-decimals. And after that date, 14th of February 1968, I have learned that the Australian post office, they exchanged pre-decimal stamps until 1971, after which date these stamps became invalid. And somebody might be able to tell me later about the scarceness of other mixed frankings between the pre-decimals and decimals. But this is, however, the only one I have found. And this is, at the end, you can see here, the converted mixed rate is $1.40. And this is on a 4th airmail rate printed matter to Italy from Australia. A very nice franking. Proofs from the decimals, they should not have existed officially. I have learned that anyhow, some of them have come to the market, and to the right here that you can see that there is a source saying that those proofs who should not have been in the engraver's position, they were, and most possibly the engraver of the stamp, Manfred Kuppler, working at the note printing branch. He is possibly the source who had some of these in his existence, and they came to the market. So the only progressive die proof from the decimal period is the $1, and that is the one I have here, and this is coming from Arthur's collection and sold by Spink in 2019, where I was on place and bought it. The other example of the $1 is held by the Australia Post Office in their archival collection. Some of you also know possibly that it exists 6 colors of the 75-cent James Cook denomination as progressive die proof. Sorry, the 70-cent denomination on proofs. And you remember that the stamp issued was 75 cents, but it was considered to actually switch the denomination from 75 to 70, coinciding with the actual use of the stamp. But this was later withdrawn by the Australian Post Office. So these proofs, they were pulled in preparation a new issue with a new denomination, but it never became effective. But still the proofs exists from this preparation period. So there exists 2 sets with 6 proofs in different colors, and they were also offered in 2019, and I bought 2 of them. I bought the green one, the issued color, and I bought a second one just to demonstrate that they were pulled in different colors to prepare for issuing the denomination in 70 cents. And one of these complete sets, they are in the Australian Postal Archive, and the other set on the market, and I have 2 of them. In my collection, when it comes to the decimals, it is much more easy to make a traditional philately study with the stamps, because much more of that material exists. So I have tried in my exhibit to develop how the stamps were printed, and how they were printed in sheets, and how the sheets were perforated. So the perforation pips are something I tried to demonstrate how they were used and how they were implemented by showing graphics where I have tried to find units coinciding where these markings in the margin exists. Of course, I am demonstrating the different papers and shades in my traditional study. Printing varieties, for example, offsets are essential as they exist from this period. This is offsets from the $4 denomination, and 1 sheet was reported in 1971 showing an off-center strong offset, and these examples are from this 1 sheet reported. Again, to demonstrate the different setups of the perforation pips coinciding with how the stamps were perforated is essential. So this is one example. Another example of studies and plate varieties is to the left here. I have different perforation varieties where I demonstrate jump perforation, imperforate or partly imperforate with the different varieties. And to the right here, as these stamps were printed in high quantities and the plates they were worn, those plate varieties which is possible to see with your eye without any further tools to use, I have tried to find and to demonstrate them and highlight it. So I am not going into depth in my collection with flaws and other varieties not visible for the eye, but the major ones which are listed in the catalog as major and visible for the eye, those I have presented here. The James Cook decimal, the 75 cent, is of course a little bit more interesting. To the left here, you can see the normal setting of how the sheet was set up and printed with the perforation pips. But along the time the stamps, this denomination was printed, the plate was worn, but the post office decided not to manufacture a new plate, so they continued to print and use the full setting, but only to perforate it and cut it differently compared to the first period. So you can see to the right here that the existing vertical gutter pairs, they exist because of they decided to cut the stamp differently than previously. So this is of course a major variety which is important to demonstrate, and I have a full sheet with 5 examples, 5 gutter pairs, as you can see. Solo use is of course interesting to show with different examples, and of the 75-cent solo franking, I have tried to demonstrate it with 4 different uses. The first one here to the left on top is a domestic letter rate together with a special delivery. The 10-cent for the domestic letter rate and the 65-cent for the special delivery, altogether 75-cent. The second example down left is a domestic parcel rate, scale 2 to adjoining state in Australia, which was for a parcel from £3 to £7.75. On the right here, the first single solo use is paying for the registration on an official Postmaster General's Department mail, free of charge. So the basic rate was free of charge as it is official mail, but paying for the registration 75-cent, a very rare and interesting use. And the fourth example here is more standard example, the second airmail rate to the United States of America, 25-cent per half ounce, and the second rate means 50-cent, and 25-cent for the registration, altogether 75-cent. And during the decimal period, fortunately, it exists some very extensive and exceptional mixed frankings, and I was fortunate to buy a few of those Rod Perry had in his stock, and this is one of them. He used the term art of decimal philately for these items, so I have reused that term when I talk about it. So this is a use together with the $4. And the use of the $4 on any commercial example is very rare to find. And this is paying for a $7.45 rate, which reflects 24 times airmail rate to United Kingdom, paying 30-cent per half ounce, 24 times, and the registration fee was 25-cent by the time. So this is a correct use commercially to Scotland. Another example from Rod's collection. This is the use of the $2 6 times and $4 4 times and 75-cent. So all in all $16.75. And this is paying for 67 times half ounce letter rate, airmail letter rate to the United States of America, and correct in total. A very nice franking, of course. And this is another item I'm very proud of. It's large, it's oversized, as you can see. I am using an A3 page here. And this is important because this is one of very few uses with all dollar values used. The use of $1, $2, and $4 together. I have only recorded 3 such examples. And altogether, this is paying for 32 times airmail letter rate to United Kingdom. So this is, of course, altogether $11.20 combination, a mixed franking. Okay, you saw previously the Gloucester Soldier Club and the business reply mail from 1965. And as this exhibit deals with a context where Australia switched the currencies, I am, of course, very happy to be able to also have the business reply mails from Gloucester Soldier Club the subsequent 2 years, 1966 and 1967. So to the left here, the page is with the the £2 use, and the $4 use twice, 1966 and 1967. Again, for the same election, they obviously had yearly elections to the Soldier Club and business reply mail, and they obviously also increased the membership because the second year, 1966 here, they got 302 votes, and 302 votes and replies paying $4 for the domestic letter rate and 4 cents for the domestic letter rate and 1 cent for the charge for business reply mail. So 302 times is totally $15.10. And 1967, it is paying for 332 similar items, in total $16.60. So this is, of course, a very, very extraordinary combination with 3 consecutive years from this voting in Gloucester. An extraordinary combination. And of course, these navigators were also included in the collector's sets, as you possibly know, all of you, that these collector sets, they were placed on sale in 1966. And the meaning of these sets were addressing collectors who wanted the stamps for the collections. And these sets contained the Navigator, all 6 denominations of different values. And as the Navigators were high values, they were also partly printed by the specimen. And 10,000 stamps were supplied by the note printing branch with the specimen overprint. And the specimen overprint are existing on the 4 denominations, 75 cents, $1, $2, and $4, as you can see here. You can see the measured size of the overprint here, which exists in a smaller variety, once on each 50 stamp. And this variety is something I also got from the Arthur Gray sale. And I also have one of the 5 examples with the variant double specimen on the 75-cent stamp. And not to mix up other specimen uses in Australia, which was used for the post office training schools. And I have learned that it exists 5 types of training specimens, but I have documented so far 3 of them in this collection. So collecting 6 stamps only, high values, it's not rocket science. It is to find them in how they were produced as proofs, as stamps and in units, and demonstrate how they were made, and of course to find them correctly used. This is what I have demonstrated so far, and I would like to concluding my presentation by some acknowledgements. 15 years ago, it was Jamie Goff who got me focused on these issues. He explained for me the currency exchange in the middle of the use, and that's how I started. I was very fortunate 7-8 years later when Arthur's collections came to the market. I knew Arthur a little bit from philately previously, and he was a character you all know. And of course, to continue something he had started was, I'm very proud for that, of course. Having Torsten as a very important supplier has been critical for me to, far away from the Australian continent, find these pieces, and Torsten has also set me into contact with other people. One who I never met in person, but who I corresponded with, was your Rod Perry, who learned me how they were used, and of course shared with me his sensors with recordings. So thanks to him, I am able to state some rarity statements, because collecting a modern period like this, if you cannot reflect the importance to the community, I believe most people not will understand them. But he did it with me, and I'm very happy for that. Many postal historians, they hesitate to collect oversized items, but one of my friends from Sweden, Patrick Larsson, he learned me already 25-30 years ago that Jonas, don't miss out the large size, the oversized postal items. They most often are more important than the size fitting a normal page. And finally, not least, what Jeff, as the researcher and editor of your very fine catalogs and the team behind these specialist catalogs of Australian Commonwealth philately, has been critical for me to understand things. And I really want to emphasize that I would not say that I have seen and studied every catalog in the world, but I must say that these catalogs from Australia must be among the best in the world, because they are not only catalogs giving prices, they are also giving the comprehensive detailed information about most things which you need to know to collect something. So fortunately for me, living long way from Australia, I don't need to have access to every single source to combine everything into one exhibit. Thanks to these catalogs, it's actually quite easy to collect so far. But of course, you need to do some research outside the catalogs, and I have got very much help from Jeff, of course, to find the right knowledge and to demonstrate it. So having that said, this is where I am now with my Navigators, and I open up for questions. I did mention that it exists another commercial use of the 2 pound. It's a guy in Asia who has it, and I have contact with him, and it is of course also a kind of commercial use for business reply mail, paying for a combination of other rates. But I have not seen the details how he has explained the rate of it. It was sold by Abacus 5-6 years ago, I believe. I wonder why it didn't turn up here, because I have it on here. It should be. This is the item I am talking about. So this is not in my collection, but of course I should be fair saying that there is another commercial use of the 2 pound Navigators. At least it proves something else, that many people not collecting modern philately understands that modern philately is equally important. And now in my new career working with Corin Fila, I of course will emphasize that also modern philately can be very expensive, not least the price the guy had to pay for this one proves that. But if I would share with many of you how much I have paid for some of my modern items, many people, they are surprised when they hear that, but that's another thing. So this concludes from my side my presentation, and I open up for questions, and I will try to answer them. If I cannot answer them, I saw in the audience that many experts are participating. So let's start, Frank.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jonas. I think it's a fantastic, I think you've got a fantastic collection there, and especially all the combination usages and some of the decimal usage, and it's fantastic. And if some of the unique items there that you got, I don't think you're going to see very many of them. Like you said, some of them only got less than 10 known. So, as Jonas said, I'll open it up for questions. I've had no questions in the chat, so.
Jonas, I've got one.
Yes, Gary?
Out of all the countries in the world, and you're looking for something new, why pick Australia and why pick the Navigators?
I think there are three answers on that. The first answer is that I started 9 years old to collect sailing ships. And of course, when I developed my collection with sailing ships, I found these Navigators, and I tried to find a nice item to use in my thematic collection, but I never found any item until I found the mixed frankings. And of course, I could use a mixed franking, which I did. Then when I discussed this with Jamie Goff 15 years ago, he said, but Jonas, have you seen actually the fascination with the Navigators? Because the Navigators, they exist in these two currencies. And I hadn't seen that. I never perceived that until he told me. And when I studied that further, then I actually saw the fascination with two different currencies used with the same design. So I started to collect it, but I realized that everything important is stuck in other collections, like for everybody. So I was waiting, and of course trying to find what I could find on the market. And when I were in Melbourne in 2013, Arthur, he showed me what he had in his collection. And I realized that, wow, this is what I need. Unfortunately for all of us, he passed away only a few years later. And that was, of course, very sad, because he has not only got me interested in the Navigators, he has also saved me from Scotland Yard. But that is another story I will tell you with a beer in Perth. Just to
That involves drinking.
Yes, but when Arthur's material came into the market, very soon thereafter, Millennium offered the proofs, and I was fortunate in strong bidding competition to buy the proofs. So when I had the proofs, that gave me the energy to spend the rest of the money. I mean, the proofs, they were very expensive, though I had the start, because I knew that without the proofs, I could never develop it correctly. So with the proofs as a starting point, I got contact with Rod Perry, and Rod Perry, he offered me the mixed frankings, and then I were there. And of course, when you are ready to buy and pay, more and more people, they offer you what they have. So Rod and Torsten and a few others, they came, and suddenly I realized that this collection I will bring to Australia in November most possibly includes everything I need to cover this subject. So the completeness in many aspects I will demonstrate, because I can tell you already now, I have not shown everything for you. I need to have a wow factor for the jury and for all of you in Perth. I have a few other items you have not seen tonight, which will be there. So the three answers on your question is that sailing ships was my fascination from youth, and the two currencies used for the same issue was a motivation to start seriously. And of course, I started unseriously because other things were stuck. But when things came to the market and they came in front of my eyes and I decided to spend the money, that's where I were. And retirement of my other collections coincides with the cash flow I have needed for starting new things. So I sold my sailing ships and started with the Navigators. That's what I did. And here I am.
Frank, I have
Jonas,
a
can I-
question.
I was just going to suggest you stop sharing so we can all see each other's faces again.
Yes, I can do that. I can stop sharing. Thank you for
There we
saying.
go.
Frank, Graham Floor, I have a question for Jonas, if you,
Yeah, Graham?
or a comment. Jonas, if you wanted, this is an area that I love collecting too. And if you want to extend your collection even further, the £1 bass, for example, and the 10 shilling Flinders is in 2 papers.
Yes.
So you could collect the same thing twice. And also on the mixed frankings, the threepenny Queen Elizabeth, for instance, is also in Helican paper and not in Helican paper. And that could
Yes.
even double up again. So you could have a huge collection if you like to go a little bit further.
Yes. Yes, I have actually, you are not the first one saying that. And the format I am limited to if I want to do it in competition is, of course, the format 8 frames. I will now show 7 frames in Perth, and well, maybe what you say is but I will show you how I have tried now to develop it further. I will, for example, present a study of the collectors sets also. They exist in different varieties, as
Yes,
you
they
know,
do.
and so I will deepen that study partly. But the paper studies, as you mentioned, is of course you will find them in my collection. I only gave you a glance here, but thank you for the advice. I will think if I should enter that door, as you say.
Good, thanks.
Any more questions?
Can I raise a couple of items, if I may?
Yes, Ian.
The first one is rather pedantic. You do know what judges are like. The pound symbol that you actually show in your write-up, because you go to some length in the pound,
Yes.
shillings and pence, is actually a decimal representation of the pound symbol and not
Aha.
the LSD symbol. So you might like to look at that. It's quite interesting. The arm set actually have a double strike across the L, if you look. It was dropped to a single strike across the in the Navigator set, but still retain the loop at the bottom of the L.
Aha.
If you look at the British stamps, the first issue came out in 1972 without the loop in the L, but it's rather pedantic, but you might be interested in. What I was more interested in is your pair of, I think it was 7/6 die proofs.
Yes.
2 comments on that. Are you sure that they're not plate proofs?
Yeah, good question.
And the second thing is, some of the die proofs were certainly produced in pairs from the roller. And in fact, some of the lower values, when you take them off the card mounts, you can actually see parts of the second impression. Now, I know that Richard's still with us. I know he can't speak, but it's something Richard might know more about. It is possible that there were pairs of impressions on the rollers that were used to produce the dies. But I think that's unlikely because there's no impression, is there, on your other die proof? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I need to, if I remember correctly, it is the same paper as for the
Sure.
presentation proof. But
two things worth looking at is the spacing between the 2
yes,
die proofs and whether that's the same spacing on the sheets.
yes.
But I
understand that.
think some of the dies were actually produced in pairs and they rode them into the plates in pairs. I don't know if anyone can correct me. Richard will be the person, but he can't speak. And some of them have technically what's called die 1 and die 2. I think is it the Christmas issue or one of the issues later? having handled nearly all of these die proofs over the years, because we had a full set of them in what was then the Queen's collection, I am fairly familiar with all of them, and there's some quite interesting other things. And Arthur was particularly interested in the double die proofs from those proofs, but of course you can't see them because they're masked out by the cardboard mounts, which were mounted with horrible stuff called, I think, sellotape, which is what you were complaining about, the staining gum.
Yeah. Thank you for telling me.
Ian, I think you're right, but I'm not sure. The decimal navigators were made in a very convoluted way because they used plastics and nickel dies to build up the plates, and I'm sure that pair is either a pair of a die that was used in the process, or it may be a pair cut off a block of 4 of a quadruple die that was used in the process of making up the plates.
Jonas, I think
I've sent Jonas all the details of all the instruments, haven't I?
Yes, I will look another time there.
Yeah.
Okay. I think it's the 7 sixpenny value rather than the decimal one, though, isn't it?
Oh,
yes,
that might be right too.
7/6.
Yeah, no, that was. Sorry, that was a 7 and 6, wasn't it? The same thing applies, I think. The same thing applies.
Sure. Well, it may well be that this is speaking, I don't know anything about this issue. It may well be that they produced a die of 4 to roll into the plate finally.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Okay.
Thank you, Ian.
Jonas, I've never seen it before and I've not heard of it before. So
no, me neither. So thank you for telling me, and also thank you for. I have not at all thought about the pound symbol, but I will definitely study that later today.
It's been very pedantic, but
but
when you go into that sort of depth about
Yes.
what, and it's quite right, the decimal pound conversion, and you really ought to use the right symbol. Whether you find it on your in your special symbols, I don't know.
Yes, I found it there, but it must have been luck.
Okay.
Just a quick point, page 24, you've got 1868 instead of 1968.
Thank you. Wrong year. Thank you. Proofreading, that's important.
That's
That was carried by the ship.
That's right.
Judges to find.
Thank you very much.
Any more questions or comments? No.
Will I meet any of you in Perth and we can talk in front of the collection? Yes, looking forward to that.
There are a few of us.
When is the Perth activity?
6th of November.
Spring Racing Carnival. Why go?
No,
Ah,
because I'm not into
rather do.
horses.
Lick some stamps or punt on ponies.
I'd rather go to an exhibition than go punt on ponies. Okay. Well, now I'd like to ask Ted Gallagher to give us the vote of thanks, please. Ted, over to you.
Jonas, it's my pleasure to thank you on behalf of our society. Firstly, I'd like to compliment you on your choice of topics, not just Australian stamps, but Australian navigators. For those of us who went to school in Australia, navigators were part of our history lessons. We learned about James Cook exploring the east coast of Australia, Matthew Flinders circumnavigating the Australian continent, and many other navigator exploits. And you covered the introduction of decimal currency. Many of us are old enough to remember the excitement at the introduction of decimal currency, getting a whole new set of definitive stamps, as well as going to the bank to exchange our money for the new currency. It was like monopoly money. I'm particularly interested in the navigators because I've got a reasonable collection myself. However, your display this evening was outstanding. Or should I say this morning? Firstly, your die proofs. It was good to see a complete set of decimal die proofs in such good condition. It is interesting to contemplate the origin of your pair of 7 and 6penny Cook imperforate stamps. I'm told that the Australia Post archives have several make-ready imperforate sheets. It is possible that your pair may have come from the top row of such a sheet. Whatever the origin, this pair is very rare indeed, perhaps unique in private hands. Then your decimal proofs, the 2 70-cent Cooks and the £1 Flinders are also very rare, again possibly unique in private hands. The second outstanding aspect of your display is usage. Some very hard to get single frankings and some very interesting mixed usage. It's hard to cover all of those exciting mixed usages, but I particularly was fascinated by the Gloucester Soldiers Club reply paid cards, particularly the £2 Navigators and the £2 coat of arms on the same card. You also treated us to some publicity cards, some specimen overprints, offsets and electro varieties, all very interesting. Finally, I'd like to compliment you on the style of your presentation. It was very appropriate for a Zoom meeting and made it easy to understand and enjoy. I would now ask those in attendance to unmute themselves and join me in thanking Jonas for his outstanding display.
Here,
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. And yes, again, Jonas, thank you very much. I think, like Ted said, it's an outstanding, exhibit, and I'm looking forward to see it in November. Hopefully, and most of us will be there, or a few of us will be there to see it. So it'll be good to see the 7 frames. And now, normally I would, if we were in a face-to-face meeting, I would give you a plaquette for the memento of this presentation. But I'll get my secretary, Bill Clark, to send it in the mail to you. So if you can send me your address that you want afterwards, I'll get Bill to send you the plaquette.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Frank, I think looking at the age of the attendees, we should all break into the song we learnt at school in 1966. In come the dollars and in come the cents to replace the pounds and the shillings and the pence. Be prepared, folks, when the coins begin to mix on the 14th of February, 1966.
Well done.
I have to say, I greatly admire the Australians, because you must have come twice as wealthy overnight, because that $1 was 10 shillings, wasn't it?
But we lost out on our lollies.
Yeah, probably everything doubled in price at the same time.
All right, I'll just go through a few formalities for the meeting before we end. I haven't got any announcements, but don't forget that we've got another Zoom meeting, which is in a couple of weeks' time, which is our postal history Zoom meeting, and that's on instructional markings. And I know John was looking for people to present, but I think it's full up now. Is that right, John?
Absolutely, Frank. Thank you.
No, you're making some noise.
All right. Is there anything else? Any announcement from out there before I go through some of the rest of our meetings?
Frank, you better ask everyone to enter Perth if they haven't already.
Oh, definitely. I was going to ask you. Well, definitely. If you haven't already entered Perth, I think Jack, you need to enter Perth.
It conflicts with Melbourne Cup Day, from what I can gather.
No, well, we can still enter. No, it is. No, the extension finishes today, but I think if anyone wants to enter Perth, they'll be willing to accept the exhibit, because they are looking for exhibits, and it's probably the sign of the times that, you know, it's been hard to get exhibits at exhibitions in the last couple of years. Don't know if that's due to COVID or what, but exhibitions are, you know, looking for exhibits. All right, future meetings. On the 5th of September, we've got our daytime meeting, and where Peter Leach is going to be presenting his Victoria High Value Duty stamps up to 1900. As I mentioned, on the 13th September, we've got the Zoom meeting at 7:30 p.m. With structural markings. And then on the 21st of September, we've got our annual general meeting at 7:30. And then our philatelic meeting at 8 o'clock, where I give the reins over to Gary. And then we've got the library afternoon on the 30th of September at 2 p.m. Now, if there's no other announcement or anything, I will end the meeting, and thank everyone for coming. And Jonas, thank you very much again for presenting. I think, you know, like I said, we've all been very privileged to see such a, you know, marvelous, you know, marvelous exhibit.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
All right.
Thank you, Jonas.
Thank you, everyone.
Fabulous,
you.
Jonas.
And I'll see everyone around. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, Frank.
Enjoy.
Bye.
Bye.